Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. We are within a week from USC football kicking off their 2023 season and going to be hopping on and talking about what we want to see from USC heading into this 2023 season. At the end of the day, San Jose State, USC should win by at least 3 scores, even if they're not playing their best football. So I think the bigger storyline is what we're looking for out of this USC team in week 0. Again, before we get into it, just want to say, thank you to you guys. The support from the USC fans over the summer has been absolutely awesome. It's no secret I'm extremely high on this team. I've had a blast talking about this USC team heading into 2023. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. So one, if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. But more importantly, let me know in the comment section what you guys are looking for. The best part about doing this is just chopping it up about football with all of you guys in the comment section. I learn a lot from you guys. So appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. And let's get into it. I want to start on the defensive side of the ball. If you guys have heard me talk about this USC team, if USC is going to do something special in 2023, which I certainly think they can, it's going to be because this defense takes some massive strides. Now, we'll look at the offense too, but I don't think you have many question marks about whether this offense is going to be good or not. I think the more of the question is, can this offense be one of the best offenses we've seen in college football? On the defensive side, I think that's where you have – I wouldn't say questions, but I guess you would say questions. You have questions that could have some answers, but that's what we're going to be looking for this USC team week 0. And I want to start with the identity of this defense. Last year, and I've been critical of Alex Grinch, right? In terms of just that defense was not it. I didn't love him at Oklahoma. I'm willing to give him a slide. Lincoln Riley brought him over for a reason. He thinks he's a good defensive coordinator. He kept him around going into year 2. So we're giving them maybe a grace year because they didn't really have the talent on defense last year. You look at this defense this year, you can't have that. They didn't have the talent or depth argument that you had last year. This team on defense, I think, is extremely talented. They've done a phenomenal job in the transfer portal, getting their guys. This is a year where you see this USC team take massive strides on the defense side of the ball. And for a lot of the members of the national media who continue to say this USC defense is a problem, like I think they just haven't really followed what's happened in the offseason. I get you look back at the numbers in 2022 and have those questions. You take a look at what they've added, specifically in the front 7. I mean, this USC defense is going to look night and day from what it did in 2022. What are we looking for? I think the first thing is I would like to see, with more of this talent, with the physicality and the speed that they've added, I want to see a little bit different identity from this USC defense. I feel like last year was a lot of bend but don't break. We'll try to stop them in the red zone, maybe force a turnover, and they didn't really get after opposing offenses. I mean, you take a look, 103rd nationally in completion percentage, giving up 112th nationally in terms of rushing yards per carry given up to opposing running backs. Like that defense just wasn't downhill enough. It wasn't aggressive enough. So the first thing I want to see is I think you have the talent and speed to be a little bit more aggressive, swarm the football, get in the backfield, have some blitz schemes kind of queued up. That's the first thing I'm seeing. And then the second thing, I know it's obvious, but I do think, many USC fans certainly don't take it for granted. You got to tackle. You haven't tackled for what? Like, you don't really tackle much in fall camp. I'm really interested to see, especially with the new additions, the new faces of physicality on this defense. Are we tackling better? I know it's obvious, but it's a really important aspect of football that can't get overlooked, especially when you look at USC last year. So downhill defense, an aggressive style of defense, which I think they have the personnel to do, and tackling. Now I want to get into the players that we're taking a look at and hopefully seeing some breakouts. Now you could go all over the defense to find some of these names. I'm going to go to my first player that if you guys probably can guess who I'm going to talk about first in the front 7 without me even saying it. But I'm going to go to Corey Foreman. Not a transfer, a guy that's been in the program. You saw flashes of him in 2022. Can you see a lot of guys take their step from year 2 to year 3? Corey Foreman is a guy that I think can take that step. And if he does, I think he can massively transform this defense in terms of the juice he can bring off the edge and rushing the passer, holding up in the run game. Corey Foreman is a guy to watch, especially with Solomon going down. He's going to be asked to play a lot more snaps than we've seen him play the first 2 years of being in this program. Can he take that step? That's a massive question I have. The next is, I can't wait to see this interior defensive line completely retooled with a new brand of physicality. You go and get Bear Alexander, and then you go and get Kyan Barrs. Kyan Barrs is a guy that, putting up 30-plus reps at 225 on the bench press. This is a completely retooled inside of the defensive line. You could throw in Jack Sullivan there too. I cannot wait to see this new brand of physicality that USC has in the trenches. And the last guy I'm going to shout out is Anthony Lucas, who sounds like he's been the star of spring practice. He's continued that momentum into the fall. And one thing about Anthony Lucas and the Texas A&M transfer, doing some work on Texas A&M, watching some of their games back, he was good for Texas A&M last year. This isn't an example of a guy that's transferring out because he just wasn't good enough to play at Texas A&M. He played a decent amount as a true freshman on a team that was relatively talented on the defensive side of the ball and played at a high level. Anthony Lucas, I think, might be the best player on this defense heading into 2023. So Corey Foreman, Anthony Lucas, the new guys on the interior. The front seven in general has a ton of new faces, but specifically on the line of scrimmage, how do those guys look? What does their snap count look like? That's what I'm going to be having my eyes on. The next thing I have in my notebook, taking a look at the linebackers. I think Mason Cobb. Now, I just said Anthony Lucas might be the best player on this defense heading into 2023. Mason Cobb has a strong argument for that. And more importantly, you talk about the identity of this football team changing. Having that Mike linebacker and Mason Cobb coming from Oklahoma State, a tackling machine, a guy who plays with his hair on fire, voted a team captain as a transfer. I think you talk about the change in identity. I think it comes from Mason Cobb. I don't have many questions marks about how he's going to play. I've seen him play at Oklahoma State. He's a dude. Can he elevate a guy like Eric Gentry's game? Eric Gentry, we've had a lot of conversations with USC fans, and I've been kind of critical in the past about Eric Gentry. And the criticism is not that he played horrible last year. He was banged up. There's a lot of reasons why he didn't really reach his potential, but that was kind of what the bone I was picking is. I think Eric Gentry can be kind of an all-conference, all-American level linebacker. You don't see those gifts, those physical gifts very often. He's put on some weight in the offseason. He's running with Mason Cobb, who is one of the more experienced linebackers in the country. Eric Gentry is a guy that I think can have a massive step, and you are looking at a front seven with adding Mason Cobb, Eric Gentry taking a step that is completely transformed, giving up over 5 yards per carry to opposing running backs. I don't think that will be a problem this year, but I'm really keeping my eye on a guy like Eric Gentry. Can he take that step? Now, looking at the back end, again, the secondary wasn't that great either. You have a guy in Kalen Bullock who was phenomenal last year, a bright spot for that USC defense. Now you're taking a look at, there's some new faces, but there are also some faces that I'm looking to step up. Going to a guy that, again, was here last year, didn't play that much due to injury, cornerback Damani Jackson. You, as a Michigan fan, wanted him to come to Michigan out of high school. Damani Jackson's a dude that I think can be another all-conference, all-American caliber player if he can put it together and stay healthy. My eyes will be on Damani Jackson in the back end. And then the other name I'm taking a look at is Christian Roland Wallace, the transfer from Arizona, played really good football for them last year. There's so many new faces. I mean, I'm going to have the notebook out, probably going to use like 3 pages of taking notes on some of these guys and what you're going to see. You have a lot of question marks. I get that. But I think there are a lot of potential answers on this depth chart and potentially really good answers for this USC team. Now, the last couple of weeks, we've focused a lot on this USC defense. It doesn't mean that this offense is going to be like, I'm not sleeping on this offense. Trust me with that. It's more that I'm just really focused on this USC defense taking that step. Looking at the offensive side of the ball, like this offense is going to be good. I'm just really interested in Lincoln Riley, the smartest offensive-minded head coach in the country. He's going to have a field day using all this talent. My eyes are going to be in the backfield first. I mean, Caleb Williams is going to do his thing. That being said, I'm really interested to see how this running back room shakes out. If you guys have been listening to me all summer, you know how high I am on a guy, Marshawn Lloyd, who's coming over from South Carolina. That South Carolina offensive line was not good last year. And now he's running behind an offensive line that I think is really, really good. And so Marshawn Lloyd created a lot on his own in the SEC last year. You give him an offensive line in the Pac-12, I think Marshawn Lloyd could have an All-American year if he gets the carries to do so. And that's not even me taking a shot at Austin Jones, who was phenomenal coming in for Travis Dye last year. That being said, it's more has to do with how high I am on a guy like Marshawn Lloyd. Now, the rest of this offense, a ton of question marks, not on how good they'll be, but just how are these guys going to be used. I want to talk about Raleek Brown. How many times is he going to catch the ball or touch the ball, I should say? How is he going to touch the ball? How are they going to manufacture touches for Raleek Brown? That's up there in my notebook in terms of like a playmaker that needs to have the ball in space. And then looking at this wide receiver room a little bit deeper, I think you have your starting top 3 receivers, Dorian Singer, Mario Williams, and Brendan Rice. I've talked a lot about Taj Washington as well. How are they going to use all those guys? But I specifically want to see how they use the true freshmen, right? Zachariah Robinson and Deuce Robinson. Zachariah Branch, and Deuce Robinson. I think Deuce Robinson, and this is not a knock on Zachariah Branch. It sounds like I'm taking shots at other players. My eyes are going to be on Deuce Robinson in terms of USC hasn't really had a big body wide receiver that can work the middle of the field. I think Deuce Robinson presents that, right? Massive frame, massive speed. He, in my mind, is a matchup nightmare. When you have kind of just matchup nightmares all over the field, and their best cornerbacks have to go to cover Mario Williams or Dorian Singer, and you get Deuce Robinson on a nickel corner or a linebacker in the slot, I mean, that's barbecue chicken all day. It's like Deuce Robinson. Linebackers don't have the speed to match up with him. Nickelbacks don't have the size to match up with him. Deuce Robinson could be the ultimate chess piece for this USC team in terms of working the middle of the field. When you have a guy that can work the middle of the field, combined with how many weapons you have on the outside, I mean, that's when it really gets dangerous. I want to shout out my guy, Taj Washington. He's a guy that I picked him to lead the team in receiving yards. You keep hearing his name. I think he's one of the most underrated players, not only on this USC team, but in the whole entire country. Quite frankly, it's an embarrassment of riches. And what I'm kind of interested in is how does he use all these wide receivers and how are they touching the ball? And then the last thing I'm looking for is the offensive line. And it's not in a bad way. It's more Jonah Monheim working over to left tackle. How does he look? I would assume he's going to be just fine. You have some really good tackles, Jonah Monheim, Michael Tarkin, who started a lot of games in the SEC. And then the inside of this offensive line, like you lose a guy like Andrew Voorhees, who was absolutely awesome last year, Brett Nylon. Like those guys were great. I don't know if this group on the inside takes a step back. Justin Dedich, Emmanuel Pregnon, Jarrett Kingston. Jarrett Kingston, a guy that probably could have gone to the NFL draft. Emmanuel Pregnon, every team wanted him in the transfer portal. The talent is there on the offensive line, and I love the narrative that people have with USC doesn't have an offensive line. Like, I don't get that because this offensive line is going to be great, and it was pretty good last year. So you look at this USC team, the question for week 0 is not whether they win this game. The question is, how are they using all this talent on the offense to kind of manufacture those points? And then on the defense, which guys are going to step up and be difference makers for this USC defense heading into 2023? We're going to get our answer next week. We'll hop on after the game, talk about what we saw again. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.